And we are live. Good to go, Mary Jameson. Oh, we lost her.
There she is.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, not sure what happened. I got booted out. I'm back. Welcome
Good to go when you are.
What's that? Good
Ready
evening.
when you are.
Welcome to tonight's meeting. I'm going to call the regular meeting of council for June 8th to order. You have before you a copy of tonight's agenda. We do have two additions under new business. L is an excused absence and M is an excused absence.
Mayor Jameson, I actually have them on the same report, so it's just going to be one.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so one addition under L, excused absence for Councillor Anderson and Councillor Willows. Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Councillor Dufert and Councillor Chambers, any questions to the motion? All in favor? Thank you, motion carries. Item number 3, any declarations of interest? None be, oh, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, Your Worship, maybe just 7I. I'm not sure how we do this on Zoom, but yeah, I'd just like to declare an interest there. I may end up auctioning that stuff. I'm not sure what the plan is there.
Okay. So I'm going to suggest that you sign off and sign back in. We'll wait for you.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything further? Okay, nothing noted. Moving on to item number 4, announcements, awards, ceremonies, and presentations. I'm not sure if you've all seen the press release from the GNWT this afternoon, but we have a new Minister of MACRA. It is the Honorable Shane Thompson, and he's also the Minister responsible for youth. And Minister Chena will now be the Minister responsible for the Workers' Safety and Compensation Commission. So that was interesting news. So with that, I'm going to, does council have any announcements? Nothing from council, administration?
Thanks, Your Worship. Just three announcements, if I may. I think first off, I just wanted to recognize, believe this is our first council meeting since the news came out of BC or surrounding the residential schools. So certainly council and Town O'Hea River recognizes that continued horrific news that the country is dealing with right now. The Town O'Hea River did lower its flags in recognition. We did lower them for 215 hours, one for each child that was lost and uncovered in BC. And obviously we continue to recognize and enhance our understanding of how that impacts our community. So just wanted to note that we have participated in lowering that. And I think the mayor as well has also participated in an event that the Soaring Eagle Friendship Center had. Also, just news is coming that our long-term reporter, Paul Bickford, is getting near the end of his term. We knew that he was seeking to go back home, and I think he's on his final weeks here as a reporter for the Hub. And I think it's worth recognizing all the work that he's done over the years, and especially in a time now where some of our news is questionable through our social media venues, and newsprint struggles to survive and really across the country, especially in small communities. So we've been lucky to have him and that reporting. I think a pleasure to have him informing our community on happenings through a very professional and balanced reporting style that was a good fit for our community. So certainly we'll miss having those conversations and hopefully look forward to his replacement. And I think that was it. I just had those two.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 6. A regular meeting of council minutes for May 11th, 2021. Looking for a motion to adopt. Councillor Dewey, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Can we scroll back there just for a second? I lost the date. I'll move that the Council of Town of Hay River accept the minutes for the regular meeting of council May 11th.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dufert. Any questions? Comments? None being noted. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Item number 6 is administrative inquiries, and I'll pass it over to SAO Smith.
Thank you, Worship. All departments remain very busy as per usual, but a little extra added workload, I guess, with moving into construction season, both for the businesses within the community organizations and our own construction activities. Of course, very full agenda today. So also, though, we have been able to see some staff starting to take vacations. It's been a long time coming for a lot of our staff, including our Director of Finance and our Director of Public Works and Services, who are currently on vacation, but able to connect through technology tonight. So appreciate that they're able to do that and provide information to you. But outside of that, the rest of us are here holding down the fort when they're not able to respond. So we'll start off this week with the Director of Finance, please.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. The town's property tax auction will be Thursday, June 10th at 9 a.m. Bidders will be able to register ahead of time and participate either through Zoom or in person in the council chambers. The registration form details all the particulars relating to the auction process as set out by Property Assessment and Taxation Act. Additional information has been posted through the town's Facebook page. Our office hours are going to be back to the 8:30 to 5 on Thursday to accommodate a little bit of extra time ahead of the auction for bidders to get in to get registered, and also extra time at the end of the day to ensure that payments can be made if there's any, if there are any properties that are sold at auction. Also, we levied our property taxes in May, so those notices were sent out to property owners. Property taxes are due July 31st this year at 5 p.m., after which arrear balances will accrue interest at a rate of 1.8% per month. Also, we're including in our May's utility bills, which we haven't sent out quite yet, communication to residents that we revised the utility bylaw. We're a bit limited in how much information we're able to put in that bill. So it's really just going to be referring residents to the bylaw. That might be a little bit cumbersome for some residents if they don't know specifically what they're on, but we're hoping that the changes that we made clean that bylaw up a little bit and make it a little easier for people to decipher what their bill is going to be. The change is going to be effective June 1st. But for most residents, most businesses, it shouldn't be a significant impact. There were some changes. Again, we targeted that 12.5% across the board. So it will be an increase, but hopefully they're not too much rate shock. And it was something that we did advertise fairly heavily that was coming. This evening, I'll be presenting the 2020 audited financial statements. I've also brought the Q1 O&M and capital reports. So I'll be speaking both of those briefly and answering any questions council may have. All these items were reviewed by the Finance Committee Friday before last in detail and agreed to be brought forward to council. Also, just briefly on a personal note, my partner Esten and I would like to express our thanks to everyone who offered support to our family. We had a fire at my house, or at our house 2 weeks ago. The outpouring of support from the community has been unimaginable. We had numerous people offer to put us up and provided replacement clothes for our daughter, which is greatly appreciated. Also wanted to specifically thank the Hay River Fire Department. Their training and quick response really minimized the damage to the structure and allowed us to recover a lot of our sentimental items. That concludes my update. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Any questions for our Director of Finance? None being noted, back to SAO Smith.
Thank you, Worship. The Director of Protective Services.
Thank you, Worship. Just wanted to highlight a couple of things that weren't in the report. Last week, we had 6 students pass phase 1 testing of their NFPA 1001 professional firefighter training. So I just wanted to congratulate them for doing that. We also had a structure fire down on Patterson's Road that isn't showing up in the month-end report, but overall it was a really great response by the department. Made for a busy day for our first day as a fire chief, but I was glad we were able to contain the fire to a single property as it was fully engulfed on arrival. I'd also like to thank Keys Water Service and Northland Utilities for their quick response to support us. This week, we're currently having our apparatus service for routine maintenance, working on a report for the fire out at Patterson's, and be setting up some safety program training for town staff. So that's mainly what I'm up to.
Thank you, Director. Any questions for our Director of Protective Services? None being noted, back to SAO Smith.
Thank you, Worship. Next, the Director of Recreation and Community Services.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, everyone. A few updates for tonight. Regarding our general operations, I can confirm that the community center remains very busy, particularly after school and early evening. Swimming lessons are ongoing. Once again, I think we're into our 4th set of swimming lessons with good numbers and registrations once again. Our after-school program continues in the multi-purpose room, as does the multi-sport drop-in on the ice surface. I think we had about 15 kids again drop in after school today. So it's great to see kids have a place to go, a safe place to go, so they can be active and play sports that way. We've also had summer heat registrations recently. We're still getting some registrations, though most weeks for the summer are full. Our traditional summer heat program is full with 30 registrants for the full summer. And our new summer heat sport program is full for about half the weeks, with some weeks that have availability for about five drop-in spots for those weeks. We do expect those to fill up most likely before the programs start in July. We also have a new partnership with the Hay River Gymnastics Club that have moved some of their equipment into the curling club onto the ice surface. It's a bit of a trial to see if it's a good space for them to be able to offer more programming and see if there's any opportunity for the town to be offering some drop-in programming in partnership with the gymnastics club and possibly with other daycare groups such as Growing Together and Treehouse, and see if kids could make use of the floor mats and safe space to play. We also received approval from GNWT Environmental Health and Dr. Candola's office for increased occupancies and relaxation of some of our COVID-19 restrictions at the community center. For the most part, there were no surprises to the occupancies that we had requested. We also received approval for increased numbers in our lane swim times. We've been allowed to open all 4 of our swimming lanes with up to 3 swimmers per lane. Shower use or individual showers or stall showers are available in our pool change rooms and arena change rooms. And there are some other small changes like that that just make it easier for people to make use of the facilities and bring back a bit more normalcy once again. One thing that I did want to underline is that we've hired a new recreation programmer. So we had Courtney Fraser start yesterday. Courtney's moved back to Hay River after a few years in Alberta, bringing back her young family. So it's great to see the family here. The kids have been using the facilities, and Courtney's a great addition to our team. Has valuable experience that I'm sure will be a great addition for youth programming and our fitness programming, which we hope to start back up a little later this summer. We're also we've completed our hires for summer students. Most summer students have started for our maintenance crew, and we have 2 more summer heat employees starting next Monday, and they'll be preparing for the summer heat program. We do have a few students that will be starting after the school year, after high school is over for the year. With the community center being busy, we're also seeing the green spaces and especially our sports fields seeing much more use and more requests for special event. Slow pitch groups started back up. Some groups started back up last week, with minor ball starting tonight with their first practices. Minor ball also have a tournament scheduled with some Yellowknife teams in town this weekend. And we're also receiving requests from groups like the Beautification Committee for some of our green spaces. And it's good to see that the groups are making use of those green spaces also. Maintenance priorities, there definitely has been an increase in our maintenance and checks of green spaces and sports fields. So far, there's been a lot of litter pickup being done around the community, and the mowing and preparation of places like the cemetery have started this week also. As I mentioned, the ball diamonds have been prepared. We also prepared the Fisherman's Wharf Pavilion for their soft opening, which was last Saturday. We heard good feedback on that soft opening with good numbers, and then they expect the numbers to increase this week, given that they do expect to be at full operations this week. We're also preparing Port Landing for its June 15th opening. The docks are in. There are a couple boats in the water at this point, but the season does officially open on June 15th, and we'll be sure to have everything set up by that at that point. We are deploying our flower planters this week, and we expect that all the hanging baskets and flowers will be out by next Thursday. Lastly, I would like to underline the fact that Port Landing, we've done a bit of prep work and investigation regarding the retaining wall, south retaining wall, which work was delayed last year. We did do some excavating there to see how the base of the wall is looking and to relieve a bit of the pressure that is on that wall. And we did take advantage of that work to also do some work and some excavation at the north retaining wall, which appears to have taken some damage during this year's breakup and flooding. Those are my updates at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Any questions for our Director of Recreation? None being noted. Back to SAO Smith.
Thank you, Worship. And I'm not sure if I missed it in the director's update, but Planning for Canada Day activities has started as well. And I also wanted to just acknowledge, I mentioned about the hub earlier, but if you didn't have a chance to read the editorial from last week, a lot of recognition there from the hub on what's happening in our recreation department and and their opinion on the demonstrated leadership coming from our Director of Recreation. So I think we all recognize that through the meetings and updates that we get weekly, but just wanted to bring that to attention and say good job. Moving on next, our Director of Public Works and Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Public Works side this week, our curbside cleanup should be wrapping up this week. I think they had all of Old Town and the main downtown area done last week, and we're moving out to the corridor areas this week. So hopefully getting that wrapped up this week. A lot of capital projects starting up, or either have started or are starting very soon here. On Caribou Crescent, they've already started work on just preparing the base for the sidewalks, or not the sidewalks, sorry, the curb and gutter that will go in there. So the concrete work that'll go in, and then that'll be followed by the asphalt coming in afterwards, which is likely scheduled for sometime in early July. Riverview and Beaver project should be starting up next week. Notices have gone out to all the residents there. The work is scheduled to begin on Monday. And the new lift station work has started up for this year. They've been doing excavation work for a couple of weeks now. I believe they're almost done the excavation work and should be starting up, putting the rebar in and then doing the concrete pour for the base work. That should be starting up this weekend, I believe. And our tender is out for our tender for the new backhoe is out for competition right now. So that just went out yesterday, I believe. So that one's out. And our new foreman, I haven't heard an update, but I heard the last news I heard on him was that he was supposed to be arriving in Hay River today. And then so he will be completing his 2 weeks of isolation and then starting work with the town. And those are my updates for this week.
Thank you, Director. Any questions from council? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, just question about the our road maintenance crew, and especially the stuff that we've dug up over the winter, like a Gates Drive. We dug up a sewer there, and even Riverview Drive. Because of all the construction, those areas seem like the roads are very rough, and I'm wondering if we could do some sort of maintenance there. I know we've talked about Riverview Drive before in the past. It's going to be under construction for the next year or two, but still, so be nice if we could maintain those roads. And just the areas that we've dug up seem like they sunk over the winter, and if we could get to them, they seem like they're really rough to go across.
So just a comment, was there a question in there?
Well, I mean, my concern has always been that we used to have a road maintenance crew. I don't really think we have that specific job in our public works anymore, but it used to be a crew, like one or two, with one person with a couple of students. So I'm just wondering if there's some way we can commit to keeping up to some of the potholes and some of the maintenance on the roadways that's possible, if that's possible.
Thank you. Director of Public Works.
Yeah, and I know this was brought up at the last meeting, and we did have a crew out on Riverview filling in some of the potholes, the worst potholes along Riverview. Last week, I believe they got that completed. Riverview is going to be torn up, the majority of it coming up fairly soon here. I will make note of the other areas that we have dug up. They will be scheduled to be on our asphalt patching later this summer, but I will make sure we get guys out there and make sure that if there are any bad potholes in the areas that we have dug up, that we're dealing with them in the interim until they get a chance to get patched.
Thank you, Director. Any other questions from council? None being noted, back to SAO Smith.
Thank you, Worship. I've got several items here. I'll just start with some of it's a bit random my order, but I'll start with some of the HR functions that I've been providing assistance with, given our vacancy of our HR manager. One was, as our Director of Public Works and Services mentioned, our Public Works foreman is due to enter. I haven't got an update either, but due to enter our area, the community today. So the director and I met to talk about the work plan and priorities and where we feel some of that onboarding and orientation would sit. So happy to have him coming, and once he gets out of isolation, Mike will be back, and they'll work together in the summer on some of these maintenance items. Also, it's been very busy with summer students recruitment wise, and other HR responsibilities. We have our HR manager job ad. The deadline was last Friday, so we are now moving forward with scheduling and conducting interviews for that position. With respect to truck water services, the finance committee, coming out of our last finance committee, one of the line items was pertaining to our truck water contract. And so the discussions and direction coming out of that, as has been planned for this year, is to move forward with preparing for an RFP. Public Works and Services has the core of the lead on that, but I am providing some assistance right now, meeting with a consultant this week, actually, to help with some of the scope of work, or at least to determine if that's a fit for helping with our scope of work and service level definitions, be in alignment with our bylaw as we go out for proposals. Did have a meeting today with Mayor Jamieson through the NWT Association of Communities, which had Dr. Candola on it, and their pre-presentation of the Emerging Wisely 2021 update document. So those phases of easing restrictions through the summer and beyond, with tied to conditions, were presented and will be presented publicly tomorrow through a public release. And certainly the town of Hay River will be adjusting our own processes to fit that, and any allowances. I will state that, and this information is going to become more public. They've been keeping it more confidential, but the indication is that more statistics on community vaccination levels will be released, and that's tied into some of the Emerging Wisely conditions. Hay River's performance, I mentioned last time, is still relatively low, probably the lowest vaccination rate amongst the tax-based communities. And we need to do a better job of that. So the big push right now is really trying to get people to get their second vaccinations, and there's some demographics that are quite a bit lower than we would like. Tied into that, we did submit a application to the Community Vaccine Promotion Fund. We submitted an application that totaled $10,000, and we outlined a promotion and contest that's aimed at that 18 to 30 demographic, which does have low vaccination rates. We expect a decision on that in the next couple of days, and then we will execute that and look for some partnership opportunities to get proper messaging and out to the community. We have received notice from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities that our application for supporting an asset management program has finally been reviewed. That's been sitting with them for a long time. They've got a big backlog of applications. They are asking for some additional information to support that application. So quite a few items there actually that we'll need follow up, and I'll be taking the lead on that and working with other directors. I had a meeting this week with the Family Support Center. So their lease agreement expires at the end of June. That's for our house property on 99 Woodland Drive that they've been using for their services. We will be bringing to council an extension request on behalf of the Family Support Center for council's decision. And it sounds like hopefully they're hopeful of awarding an actual contract in the next coming weeks with the developer on their new building, which is on Riverview Drive. The Department of Lands has been consulting, doing community consultations and Indigenous groups consultations on five fee simple applications for lands that are currently leased within the Town of Hay River boundaries. Those are commissioner leases. I think several of them are equity leases. We've issued a response to them on behalf of the Town of Hay River, but just expressing our interest in the Town of Hay River, perhaps being able to sell that land or take over the benefit from the equity lease, as per some arrangements we've had peripheral, I guess, to our MOU that's in place with them. And we've also expressed just concerns with around road access requirements if those lands are given fee simple type title to the applicant. Our fees and charges bylaw has been drafted and passed through Finance Committee. It's actually been sitting here for a little bit, and we're ready to bring that to council probably next week, but pending a decision on our taxi bylaw tonight, as it has some rates in it that would feed into the fees and charges bylaw. We've been in contact a fair amount this week with the NWT Housing Corporation, who's received funding to develop a public housing, I believe, for which is in the form of a duplex. So we've been going back and forth on that, just with respect to zoning and some of our allowances for the zoning that we do have available in town for duplexes. And at this point, there seems to be some square footage compliance issues, at least with the design that they've submitted so far. But they are going through the application process, and through that, of course, if there is the opportunity to go through the Development Appeal Board if there is a need for any appeal on the decision made. Our consultation period ended this Monday for our community plan amendment that surrounds the Town of Hay River's interest in rezoning of properties on the Vail Island. That's the 10 residential properties that are close to or neighboring to our sports fields out there. We did receive one letter from KFN, so we do need to review that, and probably some more discussion needed on that, and that's something that we will be bringing forward to council at a later date as we move through the bylaw approval process. Some other activities, we're still tying up some loose ends with the invoicing to MACA for the cost coverage associated with hosting Fort Simpson evacuees. So full indication that we will get reimbursed for that. And that's not tied to the disaster assistance policy. This is separate from that. A little later on in the agenda, we will be talking about our flood damage reports for the community, where we will be preparing an application for disaster assistance, or at least bringing that forward to council. Mayor and I also met with David Connolly today from Cheetah Resources. A small project update, but an interest in Cheetah meeting again with council to provide them an update on their project. And they're also quite interested in the community themselves, us and some other organizations having an event, sort of a first barge arrival celebration, where MTS is hauling the first of their core product into Hay River and then hubbing transportation elsewhere. Couple more items. Our ECE, notice coming out of ECE that we have been approved for this small community employment support program that we applied for. So that's good news. That's an application. Our application was around $60,000, and that goes towards funding our summer student employment program. And also bylaw, later it's in the bylaw section, but I just wanted to mention here that we have identified the 2 properties on Cameron Crescent that are currently zoned in R1B. We're bringing those forward to council as we want to put those back into inventory, and the bylaw reads with the disposal through a ballot draw. And we did receive some unfortunate news around our trail partnership that we've had with the Métis, the Hay River Métis government and the Northwest Territory Métis Nation, or Northwest Territory Métis Nation. They've decided to pull out of that funding agreement. It hasn't been executed this year, but we hope that it would be. So we will continue to proceed with that work, especially coming out of some of our summer student funding applications that we've been successful with, and balancing our other budgets. But we want to continue the good work and execution of our multi-year plan there, as well as we have partnerships with other groups such as the Trans-Canada Trail. So that concludes my lengthy update and our update from administration. If there's any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from council? None being noted, we'll move on to item number 7. 7A is the 2020 audited financial statements, and I'm going to pass it over to our Director of Finance to present them.
Thank you.
Sorry, Sam, I'm going to get a motion first, then we can discuss anything on the floor. Motion to accept. Go ahead, Councillor Dufert.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move the recommendation that the Council of the Town of Hay River approves the 2020 audited financial statements and the allocation to capital reserves as recommended by the Finance Committee.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Chambers. Okay, go ahead, Sam. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've relocated to the garage, so hopefully I'll be able to get through this without too many interruptions. I'd like to start off by introducing our auditor, Drew Queen. He's a partner at Ashton Chartered Accountants. Give him an opportunity to say a few words before I get into presenting the financial results for the year. Once I'm done presenting, we'll open up the floor to council, so questions can be directed to myself or Drew, and then we'll move on to our Q1 update. Also, apologies in advance if the presentation isn't quite as seamless as usual. I'm obviously not at my regular setup at this point. I'm working off one monitor, so just please bear with me. With that said, I will pass the floor over to Drew.
Hello, my name is Drew Queen, and as Sam mentioned, I'm a partner at Ashton Chartered Accountants, and I've been the manager on this audit for a number of years. I'm going to leave the details to Sam, but if any questions do come up on any of the statements or balances, please feel free to ask. Okay, Sam, go ahead.
Great, thanks, Drew. So I'll start just by directing council to the MD&A, which is at the beginning of the financial statements. It's on page 37 of this document, Stacy. So this was prepared by SAO Smith and myself, and it provides both the summary of our financial results. Did we go to the wrong place? Sorry, it should be right after that, right after the motion. I might be going off the old version of this document. Can you just scroll down a couple of pages? So we're looking for the management discussion and analysis. So it would be page 1 of that package. Looks like that one, Stace. There we go. So this document, I'm not gonna read through this whole thing. I do hope that council's had a chance to review it. If not, this provides a summary of our financial results, and it highlights some of the major accomplishments that the town achieved during the year, and also identify some of the challenges that we faced in 2020. Many of these events, both for good and for bad, impacted the town's financial performance. Overall, the town's financial results are a stark change from 2019. 2019 was a year where we faced significant financial hardship from the dump fire. That was a $1 million event, which unfortunately we've come to find out that The town basically had to bear the entire cost of that, other than a small percentage of it being covered by insurance. We were not successful in our application for disaster relief from the GNWT. So that created a pretty significant hole in our plan for 2019. 2020, on the other hand, the financial results have allowed us a vital replenishment of our reserves, which we will be using to fund our future capital needs. We've got council's approved a 10-year capital plan, and those reserves are vital for our ability to be able to apply on capital contribution agreements with GNWT and with the federal government. So with that said, I'm just going to go through the statement of financial position, and then move on to the statement of operations, and finally conclude with a summary of the town's reserve situation. So if you could please, Stace, jump down a few pages to the statement of financial position, please. Should be after the independent auditor's report. I think 3 pages below that. Page 42, I believe. Yeah,
Yes.
here we are. Excellent, thank you. So I'm just going to highlight some of the significant balance changes and speak to them. The cash increased, and cash is really, we have a cash flow statement that details line by line the changes in our cash, but in general, we didn't spend as much money as we thought we were going to, and we were able to collect some of the receivables that we had outstanding at the previous year. And if you notice, the municipal taxes receivable dropped from 1.5 million to 750,000. That increases our cash level. And on that note, municipal taxes receivable, that change is primarily due to resolving some of the outstanding issues relating to MTS, NTCO bankruptcy item. Accounts receivable. So we have a significant increase in accounts receivable. That increase is primarily driven by the ICIP funding. So we recognized about $1.5 million in capital contribution relating to the ICIP, which is the Federal Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program. So we're showing that money as receivable at year end, and the other side of that transaction you see on the income statement as capital revenue. Jumping down to the liabilities, we do have a reduction in our accounts payable accrued liability. That's really just down to the timing of when we pay our bills, primarily. School tax payable balance, that did reduce a little bit from the previous year. Unfortunately, that is still an issue that is unresolved with the government. They show one balance, we show another. It's I'll say it's a legacy issue that we haven't come to an agreement with them on. I would say that we're working through it, but we haven't made much progress on it since the last time I spoke to it. But it is something that's on my radar to address. Again, these are balances that go back decades in some instances. And again, my position on it has been that a lot of that should be written off, which would be in the town's favor. But for the time being, it sits as a liability. Deferred contributions. So deferred contributions are effectively when the town receives funding dollars that we haven't spent on eligible capital programs. So the deferred contribution balance in note 8, it details it, but really that's relating to gas tax and CPI. And so we received money from those pots that we haven't spent. That's why that balance has increased. The other item, our long-term debt, we continue to make payments on our long-term debt. That relates entirely to the recreation center. Moving on to non-financial assets, the change in our general fund and utility fund, really that's just down to the timing of the work that we've been doing. So these balances will increase as we spend money on capital, and they'll decrease as we amortize those assets. So in the year, we spent significantly more in our utility fund. That was work relating to the lift station and the underground road work on Beaver Crescent. So that's why there's an increase in our utility fund and a decrease in our general fund, because it was amortized in excess of what we spent. If you could move to the next page, please, Stacy. So this is the statement of operations and surplus. I won't speak to all of these items. At a high level, COVID had a significant impact on our operations. If you look at our, we in 2019 we had $15.2 million in revenue. That dropped to 14.6, which ended up being close to our budget, but the distribution of it didn't come in quite the way that we expected it to. We recognized less water and sewer revenue because we didn't implement the increase that we had initially budgeted for. So in 2019, council approved as part of the 2020 budget 10% increase. We decided not to implement that. That was about $180,000 impact on that line item. But overall, we did recognize additional government transfers for operating that we hadn't included in our budget. Overall, we ended up close to our budget, but it was a reduction from the previous year. On the expense side, that's where we were significantly under budget, and that is where basically the bulk of the additional transfer to reserves became available from. At a high level, the reductions really were driven from transportation, public works. That was about a $800,000 difference, and recreation culture, $600,000 under budget, but almost $1 million, just slightly over $1 million under the previous year spend. So by virtue of us not having the recreation center open for a pretty solid chunk of the year, that caused some significant savings from a cost perspective. It's one of those things, the level of service was reduced greatly by not having the pool open, by the community not being able to use that facility. So from a financial perspective, it's good news, but from a service level, we weren't able to do what we would normally do. There were a few accruals that we booked in 2019 that didn't turn out quite as badly as we thought. So that's reflected in the fiscal valuation number. The other big change from the previous year, obviously, is the dump fire, which I spoke to. So that's reflected in the environmental, public health and services line item. That's why there's a significant reduction of about $1 million. There. And I guess the last item I'll speak to on here is the net transfers for capital. So that is this below the line under the other revenue expenditure section. So that item, we don't budget for it because we really don't know at the beginning of the year. We have an idea of what kind of capital work we're going to do, but we don't necessarily know the full mix of how we're going to specifically fund each job and how far we're going to get into each one. So that number, we ended up doing, more capital work that was funded than in the previous year. And as a result of that, we picked up $4 million of capital revenue. So at the end of the day, our annual surplus was significantly higher than budgeted. Again, mostly that was primarily driven by us not having budgeted the net capital transfers, but also just real savings that the town benefited from, and additional funding that we got as a result of COVID. So, obviously the COVID has changed our lives, but it from the town's financial perspective, it has allowed us to replenish our reserves, which, as I mentioned, that's going to be crucial as we continue our capital plan over the next few years. So on that note, I want to just jump down briefly to speak to our reserves. I believe, Stace, it's on page 54 of this package. It should be note, if you jump down, it should be note number 12 is the accumulated surplus. Thank you. So under the internally restricted reserves, we decided to early adopt, I guess. The bylaw was actually approved in January of 2021, but we made the decision to early adopt it. So we consolidated our reserves. So some of these reserves, it really didn't make sense for us to have like a management training reserve, mobile equipment replacement, et cetera. So we reduced the number down to 4. So we've got a recreation infrastructure reserve, municipal infrastructure, a landfill reserve, and utility infrastructure. So as the names describe, recreation infrastructure, that is basically going to be a reserve that we're going to build up for the inevitable replacement of the pool. Municipal infrastructure, it's the catch-all for everything else. Landfill is specifically for what we anticipate our share of the landfill remediation costs to be. And utility infrastructure is all of the underground infrastructure, lift stations, et cetera. So with, you can see that in the previous year, reserves were $2.1 million. They've jumped all the way up to 5.5. And the allocation split on this was we'd recommended, and the finance committee agreed that we allocate $150,000 to recreation infrastructure, $100,000 to landfill, and the remaining we just did like 2/3, 1/3 between municipal infrastructure and utility infrastructure. So again, this is really positive news. When I look at the financial situation last year in 2019 versus 2020, we're in a much more healthy situation, and this is critical for the town to be able to apply on those programs. The ICIP program that I mentioned, that was over $10 million that was approved, $10 million of approved work. If we don't have reserves, if we don't have our share of that money, we can't apply on it. There's been instances where communities have gone through the process of applying and they didn't have their share, so they ended up not being able to participate. Being able to complete capital work for 25 cents in the dollar, unfortunately, that's really the only feasible way to do it now. So that's why it's critical that we continue to build these reserves and have them in place so that we can apply on that work and do it. I believe that concludes my presentation. So at this point, I'm going to open it up if there's any questions for myself or for Drew.
Any questions or comments? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, just had a question on the borrowing limit. So we have just over $13 million in debt right now, and what's our borrowing limit? Is it 25? Do we have a limit with the JNWT? Sorry, do we know that?
Go ahead, Director.
I don't have that number immediately in front of me, Deputy Mayor. I'll need to recalculate it off the current financial statements. I can tell you that we did look at that fairly recently, but I don't have that number immediately available for you, but I can undertake to get that number for you.
Yeah, so it's a formula that they give us. Is that how it's calculated?
Correct. It's based on your current debt level and your ability to service debt, basically how much revenues you have coming in.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything further from council? Okay. Nothing noted. So no further questions. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. And thank you, Drew, for taking time out of your busy day to come and sit here in case we did have questions. So I really appreciate that. And I appreciate all your work. what you do for our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Thanks, Drew.
Thanks, Sam.
Okay, so item 7B is the 2021 Q1 capital update. Looking for a motion? Councillor Dufert, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the recommendation that the Council of the Town of Hay River approves the Q1 report on capital as presented as recommended by the Finance Committee.
Thank you. Looking for a seconder. Councillor Grunewagen. And back to our Director of Finance.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have too many additional comments. I feel like the report that was provided really highlights all of the changes. I expect that when we bring our Q2 update, because normally, again, in the first quarter of the year, that's usually our lowest spend. We only recognize $383,000 of capital spend in the first quarter. So when we bring our update for June 30th, so that'll be brought before council, I'm anticipating early to mid-August. At that point in time, we'll have more detailed forecast revisions. Again, we already know that the timing of some of the work that we thought we were going to be doing on Fraser Place has already shifted. There is a lot of budgets that we were shifting between years, but overall the total budgets weren't changing, or if they were increasing, because we found additional funding sources. So the report, I think, kind of speaks for itself. But again, if there's any questions, then I'm more than happy to speak to them.
Thank you. Any questions from council? None being noted, all in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Item 7C is the 2021 Q1 operation and maintenance update. Looking for a motion? Councillor Chambers, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the recommendation that the Council of the Town of Hay River approves the Q1 report on O&M as presented as recommended by the Finance Committee.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dufert. Sam, do you have anything to add?
No, again, it's usually the Q1 update is short, unfortunately, because of, and this is always going to, I feel like it's always going to be the case. The timing of when we get our audit done, like even if we had gotten our audit done on time this year, we were about a month late. But even if we had gotten it on time, there's always going to be that time pressure to get that information into the system. As a result, we just provide the income statement at Q1. Q2, I'll be providing a full set of the financial statements. So I'll have the opening balances in the system rolled forward. And again, we'll have the statement by the expenses by object. So that provides council a more in-depth look. At that point as well, we'll also give you a detailed forecast update. At this point in time, I commend the directors. They've done a great job in terms of managing their budgets and monitoring their spending. So we're so far so good. But again, we're early in the year, and after 2020 and the changes of COVID, you don't want to count your chickens. But as I said, so far so good.
Thank you, Director. Any questions from council? None being noted, all in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Item 7D, Tourism and Economic Development Report for May 2021. Looking for a motion. Councillor Grunewagen, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll move the recommendation that the Council of the Town of Hay River accepts the Tourism and Economic Development Report for the month of May 2021.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dufert. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Item 7E is Municipal Enforcement Monthly Report for May 2021. Looking for a motion. Councillor Dufert, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the recommendation that the Council of the Town of Hay River accepts the municipal enforcement report for May 2021 as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by? Deputy Mayor, any questions? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Item 7F, Public Works Monthly Report for May 2021. Looking for a motion. Councillor Chambers, go ahead.
Your Worship, I'll move the recommendation that the Council of the Town of Hay River accepts the Public Works Monthly Report for May 2021.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dufert. Any questions to the motion? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Item 7G, Recreation Monthly Report for May 2021. Looking for a motion. Go ahead, Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. I'll move the recommendation that the Council of the Town of Hay River accepts a report entitled Recreation and Community Services Monthly Report for May 2021 as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Grunewagen. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Item 7H, Emergency Services Monthly Report for May 2021. Looking for a motion. Councillor Dufert, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the recommendation that the Council of the Town of Hay River approves the Emergency Services Activity Report for May 2021 as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by? Our Deputy Mayor Bouchard. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Item 7I. Deputy, you have declared a conflict, so I'm going to ask you to leave the meeting and then sign right back in. And boy, he was fast. How's he going to know we're done this? Okay, looking for a motion on asset disposal report. Councillor Grunewagen, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Also move the recommendation that the Council of the Town of Hay River approve the disposal through auction. Approve the disposal of a 1986 McCoy Miller ambulance in accordance with the Town of Hay River's procurement bylaw 2388.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dowie. Any questions to the motion? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Glenn or SAO Smith, I'm assuming that Deputy Mayor is waiting in the waiting room.
Yeah, I don't see him.
He was so fast, I was going to tell him to just sign out and sign back in and that you could control. I'll text him real quick here.
Yeah.
He's not waiting in the waiting room, no. There he is.
Welcome back, Deputy. So moving on to item 7J, flood damage report. Looking for a motion. Go ahead, Councillor Grunewagen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the recommendation that the Council of the Town of Hay River accept for information the flood damage report as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dufert. Any questions to the motion? All in favor?
Your Worship,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
just another question. So this report is being presented to the GNWT, or what goes forward with this report now?
Well, this report was for our information, what damage was done to our roads. It's also going to be used in any application for disaster assistance, if there is any available, but you can only ask, I guess. Go ahead, SEO Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. And unless the Director of Public Works wants to add more, you know, a listing of primarily road assets that were impacted in the community. One asset, the one asset that has the most significant damage right now, and we are working with our engineer to determine options, is surrounding the berm that's also used as a road by the West Point First Nation area. So that one, and public works crews that put a fair amount of time and material and effort already this season in dealing with the road that goes out to the water treatment plant into the Two Seasons type area. And that one's a bit of a, you know, more work to come. So, you know, while we got off fairly lucky, we'll say, as a community, and relatively in comparison to some of the other communities in the north, yeah, some of our public works assets certainly are impacted, and some we will just complete through our repair through our operating budget. We did have some indication at first that perhaps insurance could be applied, but that's not the case given the type of assets that were impacted. So we will be putting forward an application of some sort that will again come to council first, to the disaster assistance policy, and be keeping an eye on any other additional funding that comes forward. But yeah, this is sort of our pre-assessment work. We've got a bit more work to determine specifics on options and costs, and go from there. But it will keep our public works department busy, busier than normal, I would say, in dealing with some of this stuff.
Thank you. Any further questions from council? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Grunewagen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not a question, just a comment. Yeah, I was just happy with the information that the Director of Public Works was able to present in the report. Usually around this time of year, breakup and with spring runoff and whatnot, there are a lot of concerns that get raised from residents. And I just know for ones that were particularly raised to me that this report did address them. And I think that most of the complaints were handled in a very timely manner for those that could be addressed immediately. So well done. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Shout out to our Director of Public Works, getting people access to their homes as quickly as possible. So with no further questions from council, all in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Item 7K, taxi bylaw report for council. Looking for a motion? There we go. Councillor Doig, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. I'll move the recommendation that the Council of the Town of Hay River accepts the report on bylaw number 2425, taxi license, as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Chambers. Any questions to the motion? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, Your Worship, I mean, I guess I'm not, the report is thorough and it's accurate. I guess I just wanted to discuss or mention just some of the concerns that are there. There's no perfect solution to this taxi bylaw issue, both from the public's perspective and from the provider's perspective of what what's realistic, what's not. It's just an area of concern. I think this is going to be a bylaw that's probably going to be before councils in the future, because it's just what people want and what can actually be handled by private business under the certain restrictions is kind of two different stories. So though I understand the situation that we're in right now, there's still no perfect solution for a win-win for everybody here. So yeah, I thought I'd just like to make that comment.
Okay, any other comments, questions? None being noted. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Item 7, what am I on? L, excused absence for Counselor Anderson and Counselor Willows. Looking for a motion. We're not forgiving them. Counselor Dufert, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that the council of the town of Hay River excuses Counselor Anderson and Willows from the regular meeting of council Tuesday, June 8th, 2021.
Thank you. Seconded by Counselor Chambers. Any questions regarding the motion? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Okay, item 8A, bylaw 2425, taxi bylaw, third and final reading. I'm looking for a motion. Go ahead, Counselor Dufert.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move third and final reading of bylaw number 2425, a taxi license bylaw.
Thank you. Seconded by Counselor Chambers. Any questions to the motion? None being noted, all in favor. Oh, Counselor Dowie, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just was wondering if maybe administration could give just a small breakdown. I know it was in the last report, but maybe just to what some of these changes are and what that's expected to look like and what residents should be expecting going forward.
Thank you. Good idea. SAO Smith.
Thank you, Worship. So, yeah, as I mentioned, the report really outlined the kind of the process that we went through, right, where the initial concerns were tied to early service levels, being able to access cabs, being able to get a hold of the dispatch company, concerns that they were not answering phones, etc. So went through different revisions and in the end, in consultation with the public and with the committee, policy committee, concluded that there was a desire from committee and city council and ensuring that 24-hour service did remain as a requirement. And as Deputy Mayor Bouchard suggested, really putting some faith, I guess, in the market in terms of ensuring that part of it regulates itself for the number of cabs that are available for demand. But there is a requirement that there is 24-hour service that remains as it was previously in the old bylaw, the current bylaw, and that there's a requirement for each company to have a car on the road for those hours. Outside of that, I wouldn't mind just pulling up the summary in the report. If I can. Searching through it on my end here, bear with me. Other changes, there's some things tied to really the safety and protection of patrons. We improved some of the definitions on the corrupt public morals that are used within the document, instruction and officer definitions, and really strengthened the position on the criminal code convictions. That was quite dated, and we put that in alignment more with best practices and what's being used for ensuring those people that are permitted as a chauffeur's license actually have a safe record within the given number of years for each type of code conviction or code allowance. Strengthen our vulnerable sector criminal records check. This is something that we have in place as a town for our employees. It's a requirement when working with youth. Felt it's a requirement, should be a requirement for protecting the safety of patrons. I mentioned the chauffeur's permit. So before it was referred to as just a taxi permit, which was causing confusion. So there's there's a brokerage license, there's a chauffeur's permit, and then there's a taxi license. Those three are defined in the bylaw, so it did cause some confusion with the language, so we've changed the chauffeur's permit to a license that's used for a driver. The language and forms, there's some changes there. There was inconsistency in the forms that were attached to the bylaw and the language. So insurance that for each taxi that is on the road, it requires a license, as opposed to before it was, it read that way in the document, should be interpreted that way, but the form was actually that you'd have one license for multiple vehicles. And yeah, some renewal dates, some fees, slight increases in fees, just based on inflationary increases in comparison to other jurisdictions. And vehicle change allowance, that changed it from 8 years to 12 years. I think that speaks to the core of the changes, the track changes in this document. It's been through so many revisions, almost circular started to go back to where we started. So the track changes that are in the bylaw presented right now just pertain to the change back from what was brought to council in the second reading for the number of taxis. So again, going back to having 24-hour service and requirement of one taxi per brokerage license, and the changes on some of the safety elements that I just went through.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Item 9B, bylaw 2427, land disposal bylaw, looking for first reading and a motion. Councillor Dewey, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. I'll move first reading of bylaw number 2427, land disposal bylaw.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Holy. Yay, guys. Thank you. Councillor Dufert. Question, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Was there not 3 properties there or in that area, or are we just doing the 2 for now?
This is the one in Cameron Crescent, I believe, but I'll pass that through back to Director SAO Smith, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. If Stacy can scroll down to the drawing, probably better to speak to it that way. So 2147, 2148 are what's included in the bylaw. The other property that surrounds, I'll just say surrounds 1879, which is in orange. That is titled to a resident town. They actually do have now title to the kind of the L-shaped property that surrounds that. For some reason, the Atlas system has not updated the record. So no, just the 2 properties there on Cameron.
Thank you. Any further questions from council? None being noted, all in favor? First reading, thank you. Looking for second reading. Councillor Chambers, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move second reading of bylaw 2427, land disposal bylaw.
Thank you. Seconded by? Excuse me. Councillor Dufert, thank you. Any questions? None being noted, all in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Item number 9 is a motion to go in camera. Looking for a motion to go in camera. Councillor Dufert, seconded by Deputy Mayor. And before I ask for a vote on that, I'm going to ask you all to turn on your microphones. And I'll go one at a time. Do you solemnly swear and sincerely affirm that you are alone and cannot be overheard while in camera? Councillor Dufert.
Thank you, Your Worship. I swear.
Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Your Worship. I swear.
Counselor Chambers,
Thank you, Your Worship, I swear.
Counselor Grunewagen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, I swear.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor Bouchard.
I swear.
Thank you. So I'm just going to take the opportunity to thank all of our directors and staff. And I need a motion to go in camera. Everybody's good. So all in favor? Okay, we are going in camera and we will meet back at 7:55.